I think we're going to be live here in a second. Hold on. I'm just checking out to make sure that I am fully live. Let me check this out. Oh, it looks like I am live. Hold on, guys. Checking out. All right, great. So I am live. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. Well, not video, live stream with me, Ben Rojan, aka the Seattle Data Guy. It's good to see you all. Glad you are all here to join me. I've been very busy over the last few weeks. I don't know if everyone saw. Was down in Austin with a bunch of other data YouTubers. So Tina Huang, Kenji, Luke, Shank, Code Emporium or Jay, and just a whole host of other people. I'm going to post really quickly live or on the Discord. Give me a second. Okay, so just crazy, kind of busy. So glad to kind of be back. Yeah, and I was also dealing with terrible food poisoning. I think early last week, and that really took me out. Anyways, so things that I'm kind of thinking about this week, as much as has been going on, I think in the tech world, outside of just data, I think is all of the layoffs plus the hiring freezes. I think that's definitely top of mind for me. And I think I don't know if you guys are paying attention. It started with Fast, and that 100% company just completely failing. And now I'm actually going to share my screen really quick. Hey Kevin, good to see you. Let's share my screen. Share screen. Please don't ask me to quit out. Great. Oh, a million screens. I'm going to share what I'm going to look at. So I'm just going to throw a couple questions about Snowflake. We'll get there. I just want to kind of talk about quickly kind of what's going on. I feel like it's not just in the tech industry, right? Like it's broader than tech. It's startups in general. And we're seeing again Facebook, and I don't know what other companies are. I also saw Uber is also kind of doing like hiring freezes, plus making sure they're only hiring very tightly. So I think we are going into a much stiffer market probably over the next 6 to 12 months. Especially in summer. I was watching a podcast this morning with Jason, I think from YC Combinator, and I think he had a great point that's going to be kind of contagious, where a lot of other companies are going to be seeing that there are layoffs and there are also just hiring freezes. And so it's just going to be very commonplace for lots of companies to be doing this for the next probably few months. I think that makes a lot of sense. It's a great way, or it's a great excuse for some companies to lay off people. I see that in the nicest way, right? Like they're just going to be trying to save budget as we're kind of going into uncertain times. So they've got a reason to. They can kind of say that. But yeah, it's really a bummer. I personally think there's a lot of great companies that are kind of laying off people. Robinhood, I have a few friends there that have been impacted, and a couple others. So hopefully, as you guys are kind of going into the industry, I wish you guys the best of luck there. But yeah, check out this link if you want to kind of track what's going on in terms of like layoffs. I thought that this was kind of interesting. Okay, I'm going to kind of jump back over now and stop sharing. Where's my stop share? All right. So yeah, I think that's interesting. So, for people who are in the audience and maybe trying to break into careers of like, and just coming out of college, now try to get a job now before maybe things get a little more tighter, or really start working on networking and building a solid base where you can, show off your skills. Because I don't know, I can only imagine it's going to get a little bit tighter from here on out as I don't know, as companies try to like rationalize what's going on, right? Because everything kind of cascades. If companies are selling less because of supply chain issues, they're going to be marketing less because there's nothing to sell. Meaning, even tech companies that have a lot of marketing spend will also see problems. Also, if you're like me and have Palantir and Snowflake stock, you're currently crying a lot as you're just like, come on, guys. I'm seeing some major drops. So yeah, that's kind of I think what's been on my mind for the last few weeks as I've kind of been doing work and then just watching this. I think we all kind of saw it coming with after Fast, but now it's kind of I think officially kind of taking hold. So yeah, so what's going on with all you all? I'm curious what you're thinking as things are going on. Someone's got a few questions about Snowflake. It looks like curious if that's just about the company, about the product. I'm kind of, again, just if no one says anything, I can kind of keep talking, but just curious if anyone's got any questions before I keep going. Well, oof, yeah. Yeah, Palantir's definitely, for anyone who doesn't own Palantir stock, I think we saw, I don't know, was it like a 7% drop today? I don't remember. It's like $7 right now. I think I bought in at like 20. So, it's it's painful. It's not a huge position, but it's definitely enough to be like, well, that's a bummer. I don't have any. My vast majority of any stock is in VStacks and SPY. So I'm a very boring investor. Oh, and a lot in Target too. Diamond hands for Palantir. Yes, I saw Meta grew over 60% in the last years. I imagine layoffs are going to happen. I don't know. I think with Meta, like I imagine hiring freezes will happen. I think so. The interesting thing is like they said like, oh, hiring freezes are happening and we're going to mostly be focusing on mid and senior engineers. I feel like that's mostly been Facebook's strategy for the last few years anyways. Most of the larger tech companies prefer hiring, I think, in the mid to senior level because you can like let those engineers go and do work, right? Like you don't have to spend a ton of time um, training anyone. It's just like you hired these people and they're likely going to do the right work from day one. So I'm not sure. I don't think so. Facebook also has tons of capital. I think last year what they made like $40 billion in net. Like that's not even like that's like net. I was doing the math and it's like they could have paid me $200,000 extra a year for the last like few years and still made like $20 billion. So they have a lot of capital. Arguably, the metaverse is probably a bigger possible loss than anything else. So we'll see if that like maybe gets cut as part of a project. So maybe that's something that gets lost. But I imagine the rest of Meta will stay solid because it's a cash positive business. I think Tom Nash has talked like at this point it's kind of maturing, and if they don't develop anything new, it's kind of a mature enough business that at this point will just continue to spin off money, and then just maybe not grow as rapidly, even though it's still growing. I think at a pretty large rate. Like from a financial standpoint, I think it's still like I don't know what the growth rate was, like 28%, or something. Let's see. Got a job offer as a DE as a hedge fund. Been a DE for a few years. Any thoughts? That's kind of exciting. Getting a job offer at a hedge fund. I'd love to know, Gabriel, like if you can tell the salary. I'm always curious if you work for like Goldman Sachs or a hedge fund, if they pay as well as tech. Like I often hear that they don't pay as well as tech. Like it's kind of a not as great position because you're expected to work so much. Unless it's like Citadel. I think Citadel is like one that's like super like buku dollars. But from what I've heard, like Goldman Sachs programmers don't make like as much as like a trader, so people don't necessarily like it as much. So I'd be curious to know how that's like. Let's see. What's this? I'm using time to build. Oh, let's see. Yes, this is probably a good time to build a portfolio. I think that's probably a good plan. Um, I'm planning to make a video about like build like getting jobs in a tight economy, and I think part of it is just going to be showing off your skills. Like you need to figure out how you can show off your skills, because just applying to jobs, especially if you don't have experience, you're not going to stand out. It's a really loud market. There's a lot of people who want to get into tech, right? Like I think, did everyone see um, Zach Wilson's recent post on LinkedIn where he was talking about making 575K, right? Like everyone wants that job. I mean, it's so much money, right? Like for most of us, that's an ungodly amount of money. Like I think when I started in tech, I was really happy to break six figures. So it's going to be a tight market because those jobs, like especially in big tech, are so like heavily sought after that it's going to be very tight. Especially I think in like the Airbnbs and the places that may be a little less controversial. Maybe in Facebook, there's a little less, or there's a lot of controversy, so maybe they're gonna have a hard time hiring. But I imagine companies like Airbnb and other things like that are great. Also, I made this joke earlier on Twitter. That now is if you believe in a company right now that's public and you have tech skills, now is a great time to join, right? Because their stock prices are down. Now is the time to get their RSUs, right? Now is the time that it will likely double. So join now if you believe in a tech company. Like if you're like, I think this tech company is severely undervalued, it's a super great way to get like risk-free stock essentially for free, other than, basically your labor, but you're getting paid and you get some stocks. So kind of a borderline risk-free way to get stocks. Let's see. Recently got interviewed for a DE role. I'm going to try to see, what does this say? Ben, I recently got interviewed for a DE role and wanted to know what books or courses could I take for this opportunity. It would be my first DE job, currently a data analyst. Kevin, in terms of like what you could do, I think what's important is to know what tools that company uses. For example, if they use Azure, you can use, I think you can get the Azure certification, DP 203, I think, or 200, or both. That will give you the skills of Azure. Or if you're going to go within GCP heavy place, get the, Google certification. Same thing with AWS, get the big data consulting kind of background. And if you don't have experience like data warehousing, make sure you kind of read up on Inman and Kimball. So I think those are kind of important. So that's kind of what I think there. It just depends on the world you're going to live in, or the like technical environment you're going to. So I'm curious like what tools they use, because that's going to change what tools you should learn. And that's assuming you already have, Python, SQL, etc. Let's see. Would getting the AWS cloud practitioner certification be a good first step to transition to an engineering role coming from data analyst? I think that's not a bad place to start, or maybe again the Azure certification or something like that, just to add a little bit of I don't know what the good word is here, just to add some support to the fact that you have some understanding of what data engineering is. If you can go again laterally, internally inside of a company into a data engineer role from your data analyst role, that's generally better, right, than first trying to jump into another company as a data engineer, unless you have an interview and you feel like you are ready for it. Then go that route. But it's not a bad idea to at least test it out and see, like, do I even like data engineering work internally at another company, right? Very low risk of you making the wrong decision of career choice. So that's my personal thoughts there. Thoughts on building a portfolio project, leveraging tools that cost a decent amount to use. What are some good workarounds? So I think kind of your point is like, Snowflake has a certain cost and certain things of that nature, but I think there are enough free-ish tools that you can build a portfolio with. I don't think you need to be looking too much towards cost, like paid tools. Airflow's pretty much free. There are freemium versions of AWS components. I think Databricks has a free tier. Snowflake has a free-ish tier. So there's often free tiers or very low-cost tiers that you can try out. And I don't know. I wouldn't go like paid amount if you don't have to, because a lot of those paid tools, like let's say Palantir, right? Like you're never going to work with Palantir. So unless you work for a company, don't worry about that. I'd focus on the tools you can use and not get too caught up in those paid tools, just because I don't know. There's so many tools that are free. It's like, I don't know, why get distracted by tools that you got to pay for. New to your channel and have to say you're probably one of the best when it comes to, oh, thank you. That's very kind. I appreciate that. Let's see. Hey, Ben, I'm an MBA, work in data and operations, but I've never held an individual contributor data science role. To be a data science manager, do I need to come from a data science role? This kind of, I guess, probably goes with the recent tweet from Elon Musk about, good managers needing to also be technical, or if they're in a technical role. I think you need to be technical enough, right? Like, I think it's not a bad idea to understand, what the troops are going through, right? It's so common that people, like, for example, there's always this complaint, I think, with like mechanics and engineers, right? Like the engineer designs something and then the people on the floor have to like put it into play. And then the engineer puts a bolt in a place that's physically impossible for a mechanic to like put together, because it works technically, right? Like from a technical design standpoint, the solution works, but they designed it in such a way that isn't humanly friendly. So I do think it's good. Like, just spend a year if you can. Like, as a data scientist, it's paid well. If you can get that role, why not? Just understand what they go through. What are their pain points? Because then as people are growing and as people are trying to, lean on you for understanding and mentoring, you've already been there. At least you have some understanding, and you're not like, just kind of giving your opinion based on something you've read, but you've actually lived it. So personally, I think that's important. I think you should be good enough technically that you can, understand what they're going through. You don't have to be the best programmer or the best data scientist, but I think you need to be good enough that people know you're not full of BS, right? Like I don't want to follow someone that's never done the thing that I've had to do. I think that's valid. I think being the best, I think the one distinction is like, you don't have to be the best. Like you just have to be good enough that I know you know what I'm talking about when I talk about something from data science perspective, from a data engineering perspective, etc. And Alfredo pointed out there's a 30-day free trial with Snowflake, and I'd go back and look, and I'm sure they've got stuff for even beyond that. But at the very least, there's a 30-day free trial. So if you want to learn it, it's there. There are options. Don't look for paid tools if you don't have to. Thanks, Ben. According to the interview, they use Airflow Spark, was also mentioned. And yeah, they were empathetic on Python and SQL, which I spelled that right. Okay. Which I feel I'm very comfortable with. Yeah. So I don't know where you're interviewing at, but what I'd say is, Airflow is easy to work with. You can just go play. What is it? Mark, what's his name? Mark Lombardi, I think, has a great course and has free videos on YouTube. Look up his Airflow stuff. Great for intro. Spark's always a little trickier because oftentimes, for example, with Netflix, they'll ask you like certain things on like joins and effectiveness and like where you're like if you have an issue, like how to deal with those issues, and that's hard to do if you don't deal with big data problems. But overall, you can also probably learn enough about Spark via a Udemy course to at least talk to some level about it. But I imagine as long as your Python SQL are solid, you'll probably be okay. Hi there, wondering if you have any inputs preferences regarding scheduling tools like Dagster, Prefect, Airflow to implement in an already grown organization. This is interesting. So I'm curious what you mean by already grown organization. I think the one thing I will always say is try to use a managed service. Astronomer, for example, is great, or Cloud Composer, or managed workflows with Apache Airflow or for Apache Airflow. If you're doing Airflow, because it's so hard. It is very tricky to scale Airflow. I think Astronomer gives you a little more control, which is kind of nice. But if you're just getting started and just testing it out to see if it will work well, just spin up something like Cloud Composer quickly. I don't remember if Dagster has a managed version yet. I don't remember Prefect does either. I know they were beta. I know Dagster was in beta, but I think that's really important in a grown business. Is like you don't want to be spending time having to manage it. So, and then the other hard thing with like Dagster and Prefect is I don't think their community is as big. So Airflow has a lot of known problems that everyone deals with and we're all tired of, but at least they're known. Prefect, Dagster, there's still a lot of unknowns. So in a grown organization, right, like it's a little bit of a higher risk to take on so many unknowns. But that's just my thoughts there. Another role for the same company, they mentioned SSIS and SQL Server knowledge, so that might be included on the list. Yeah, that's and those are pretty solid. It's interesting that I actually found it interesting that so many companies are still using SSIS. It just I don't know. I guess I assume most companies would switch to like Azure Data Factory at this point, but there's still a huge need for SSIS. I don't know if anyone's watched Kahan's Data Solutions. He's got a lot of intros there. I used Wise Owl to learn more about that myself. But it's a solid tool to at least kind of understand where we started, and it's still used a lot, arguably. So don't throw it shade just because it's old and not cloud based. Hey Ben, namaste. Which is the best SQL tool for data engineer roles? Also, please do tell resources that cover that. I don't like. I guess I'm curious what you mean, like learning resource. Like, not sure what you mean there, tool wise. Like DB Beaver or yeah, I'm not sure. In terms of like learning SQL, you can learn for free on YouTube. There's a ton of, again, I use Wise Owl, which at this point feels old, but there's a ton of other great SQL basics courses on YouTube. Probably like I'm sure Code Academy or not Code Academy, Code Free Camp has it. So I would just go there maybe, or Khan Academy. I know definitely has a SQL kind of setup that you could use to learn some SQL. Let's see. When you mentioned Python, what are some milestones that you believe demonstrate proficiency? I think when you're learning Python, right, like there's kind of like base level proficiency, which means you understand like the basic building blocks of programming, if statements, data types, like lists, maps, dictionaries. Yeah, thinking Java. But yeah, for loops, things like functions, classes. Well, actually, I'd say class is almost the next level. So like, but there's the basic building block where like almost anyone could write it, right? Like you can write like a basic for loop. You can code things. You're not necessarily putting together the best design patterns, but you are, you're able to write things and you're able to make things happen. After that, I think you slowly start thinking about like design. So you start thinking about like classes and different types of things like that, interfaces, things of that nature. So that's kind of that next phase, which is like, okay, you understand basically the basic building blocks of programming. And now afterwards, you can start building like real things, like again, classes and things of that nature. And then after that, I think it's more like application based, which is like, oh, I built an API, or oh, I built I don't know, website, so it starts being more application based in how you actually use it. And then there's also some like weird offshoots, like, data scientists, for example, don't always have to go like understanding classes as much. They need to understand more about like pandas and numpy and things of that nature, and how like to manipulate data with Python rather than like maybe build a whole API. So, that's like kind of a weird branch. I almost want to like draw that. I should probably like draw that one day. It's like, oh, this weird little branch that, you could kind of just specialize in data manipulation and then maybe do a little less on all like the design pattern stuff. Obviously, you should eventually go that route, but you can kind of at least get base level work done at that stage. So that's kind of how I feel like it. You at least have those 3 stages. And then somewhere in there is also DSNA, depending on if you need it or not. But DSNA is weird in Python because your data structures is weird. You've got like, it's like, are you traversing a linked list? Or no, you're not really. So it's a little different. Yep, I do. So yeah, managed Dagsters in beta. We talked about it earlier. I don't think they've kind of gotten to a point where they've pushed it out yet. So I'd be excited to see like a fully managed version. I think it's kind of necessary for a lot of companies. Otherwise, you just need a large engineering staff to manage it, or more engineering to manage it. So it's kind of a trade-off. Hi, Ben, new to the channel. Great content. Quick question. Any recommendations on data engineering courses and certifications? I think I generally support any of the major cloud certifications. So when I say any of the major clouds, I mean, sorry, my back's should be sitting better. So I mean like AWS, GCP, Azure. Get any of those certifications in data engineering, and that's a solid kind of place to start. Honestly, it's going to cover most of the stuff you need, at least at the base level. I'm working on like an Azure certification review because I think a few of you have asked for it, and just kind of going through some of the prep on Udemy. I'd say it's pretty solid. It's a pretty solid baseline of understanding for Azure and understanding Azure, and even talking about like pipelines and like how to build pipelines. And I think what I really like about their course is they actually, I think, have some data engineering premise around it. Like the pipelines are talked about in such a way where it's like you can kind of see the staging and different steps taken, and even things like naming conventions. So, but any of the big 3 cloud certifications. One will take you a lot of time, and 2 probably will give you enough baseline, as long as I'm assuming you have a Python and SQL background. Again, you always want that base of Python and SQL. Okay. Where is yeah. So for anyone who doesn't know, we did a giant collab weekend kind of. We were honestly, I think, just meeting up and learning more about each other, kind of connecting. We're hoping to do more, I think, in the future, in terms of a bunch of data creators. So again, Tina was there, Ken was there, Luke, Shashank, Code Emporium, Mickey, who's more on LinkedIn, Avery's more on LinkedIn, but they're hoping to make some YouTube content as well. And Nick Wan, who's from he streams on Twitch. So it's a bunch of data creators. We were just hanging out, talking, learning from each other. Honestly, really cool people. A lot of them are not too dissimilar, I think, from their YouTube videos, which is great. No, it was a lot of fun. But the joke is Tina was supposed to be in our live that we did on Saturday, and she had left like that morning. So everyone was like, "Where's Tina?" It's like, she's gone. So yes, it was a lot of fun. I think I don't know. The data community is small. So for anyone, like, I think that's something interesting that you eventually start to learn, especially like data engineering. Our community is so small. And then like even the data community in general, it's just so tiny. You get to meet everyone. Like I feel like I've met so many people that I don't know. It's a lot of fun though. All right. Any more technical questions, guys? Do you have anything like you're looking for advice in terms of like career? I'd love to. I can also maybe let's see what else can I do while I'm thinking here. Let's see. What's this quick question? I'm a beginner. Which is the best Python resource for data engineering roles? Trying to think I mean, you can honestly go to like Code Free Camp and just learn the baseline for programming of Python. You're just using Python, and I think then just pick a more again like I talked earlier, where there's kind of those 3 stages is like learn like that first like 3 or 4 hour course that Free Code Camp puts out will give you that baseline, and we'll also talk a little bit about what do you call it, classes and some of the other bigger concepts. So you'll start going beyond just the building blocks. You'll see how to kind of build some classes, things of that nature. After that, what I'd say is maybe buy a book like Clean Code, just to understand kind of what do people mean when they say clean code? What does it look like? It's not going to be Python, but it's another good step. Another good thing to do after that is look through maybe Python libraries that you like, see how they're designed. That's a great way to. That's probably the next best way to learn after you've kind of got the baseline. Is just like see what good design looks like. So look through other people's code bases. Do you like it? Do you hate it? What makes it easy to read? What makes it hard to read? And start taking note, reflecting on that, and then start building a project around it. Start building a project. First project you can build with the basic building blocks, can just be for fun. Second project, focus more on like design principles, clean code. And then third project, maybe try to build something that's a little public and that people will see and you'll show off, and I don't know, be a Twitter bot or something, even that simple, but just something fun. So that's my thoughts there in terms of like, and I know it's not data engineering specific, but data engineering specific Python, like a lot of it's like framework, you think about Airflow, it's just framework code. It's not like legitimate data engineering. What's this? I'm an international student in the USA. What, according to you, is the best location for data engineering roles? I'm targeting DE roles. That's an interesting question. Like, obviously, I think companies that have like the highest concentration of data engineering roles are going to be big tech, right? Airbnb, Netflix, Facebook, Amazon, things of that nature. So start if you can. I would always say start there, but also don't feel limited by those, and don't feel limited by title. There are other titles that kind of get you to data engineering, like ETL developer or even data analyst. You can pivot into data engineering. I wouldn't get too caught up on data engineering just because most data engineering roles require mid-level experience. Like people don't want, juniors. There are some, but there are very few. I thought there were more, but as I started looking through the market more and more, there's not a huge amount. So I wouldn't get too caught up on purely looking for a data engineer role, especially if you're an international student. I imagine there's some limitations you have on timing and how long you have to be in the US. So, don't get too caught up on that. And I'd say make sure you're working in data, and then, you can pivot in a year or two after. Oh, especially since we're going to like a interesting hiring moment right now. Again, referenced this earlier, like Facebook hiring freeze, Robinhood, 9% of their, or laying off 9% of their team, and so on and so forth, right? There's more companies that are kind of in that situation. Uber, I think referenced this in their kind of earnings call, that they're going to be very picky on how they hire. So that probably means they're going to be looking for a more mid to senior level experience position. So yeah, just don't get too caught up on titles early on. Currently a data analyst at a larger bank and looking to make a transition into BI or data engineering role. Any thoughts on one versus the other? Yeah, what do you prefer? Honestly, both roles are great. You can eventually pivot both those roles either into consulting or something similar. I think if I recall, the Amazon interview for both those positions is about the same. It was kind of funny when they sent me the interview prep for both of those roles because it was the exact same sheet. There's also analytics engineer, which is kind of similar to BI. So, they all pay decently well. If you're good, just pick the one that you, I think, like the most, because if you dislike the work, you're not going to get promoted as often. You're not going to get to a situation where you're making more money anyways. If that's I imagine that's the eventual goal. So do what you like. So if you like doing more analytics and SQL, maybe push the BI route. If you like doing more programming and things of that nature, maybe try the DE route. But that's just my thoughts. Hi, Ben. How good is Spark 3.0 at a functional programming? What paradigm is better? I don't have a good answer here. I'm just being honest. Like, I don't code to this level. And I honestly have not had to, like, most of us who've used Spark probably use it on the cloud. So this is very like hardware intensive, and this is just not, for me. I always I think someone asked me this weekend, like, what laptop should data engineers use? And it's like, well, get a good enough laptop to connect to the internet, and then use the cloud, because that's what's going to be most of your work. Unless you work in like a highly regulated industry like finance or like casinos or something like that. Most of the time, most of the work you're going to be doing is going to be in the cloud. So you're going to be using a lot of managed services. So personally, I often say look for more managed services. Who is making more money, Scala data engineer versus Python data engineer? Well, I mean, according to Zach, who works at Airbnb, he's making, was it almost $600,000? So, and I think he's more of a Scala engineer. I'm gonna guess. Oh man, I don't want to say Scala. Like, well, the truth is though, Netflix and Airbnb are Scala, I think, heavier than maybe Python. So. And those are both probably top tier salaries. When you look at their salaries, like Netflix is upwards of 500K if you're like a senior tech lead, and so is Airbnb. So I mean, just from that standpoint, maybe Scala. There's just less positions, I'd say, with Scala. That's the difference. It's like there are higher probably salaries on the Scala side, but there's probably more positions on the Python side. So you just got to make sure that you realize that there are only so many companies hiring for a Scala data engineer, and there's a lot more probably hiring for a Python SQL data engineer. Hello, Ben. Does SED role count while applying for DE roles in my profile? I think so. Yeah. I mean, if you've got software experience, yeah, just make sure you've got some understanding of like data warehousing or distributed computing or something like that. And you can talk. Oh, and you're very solid in SQL. I think that's usually what gets most software engineers is sometimes their SQL isn't like they're used to like very CRUD operations or maybe working with other abstracted layers of like SQL. So make sure you're good at like analytical SQL, writing metric code. When I say metric codes, I mean like creating like two different populations and figuring out the the percentage difference between said populations, using like the window functions, things like that. So what I do is if you're really solid on your coding, I would go to, again, Scratch or something like that, or Leak Code or HackerRank and just test out, your SQL skills. So that's what I'd say there. Your SE role is probably great. Just make sure your SQL is solid. Hey, Ben, I would most likely need to learn Java at my DE internship this summer. Should I approach my learning from a DSA and a perspective directly? I'm curious. That's interesting. I'm like thinking because like DSNA has a place, and you should have a solid enough understanding of it. You will see it occasionally applied, but more than likely you'll need functional, like practical programming, like for 60% or 70%, depending on the role. And then like 30-20% will be like DSNA stuff. So, it's more like make sure you also know how to program in Java in general. Don't just know how to solve brain problems. So both, but yeah, I mean, if you already have an internship, that's great. If you don't have the internship, then definitely focus on DSNA. If you do have the internship, I mean, do a little bit, keep learning, because it's a great way to ensure you have a job in the future when you have to interview again. But also for your job, you're going to figure out what you need when you're there. What are the top questions you should when joining DE teams in a new company, especially if you're a DE that lacks experience? So when you're joining a company, I think what I usually like to understand is what usually you've got stakeholders. So I try to understand, what do the stakeholders care about? This is, I think, really important because hopefully you got hired and they're assuming your technical skills are good enough. The other side of everything, right, is that business expertise. If you go into healthcare, like when I joined a healthcare analytics startup, I like poured into understanding healthcare data, understanding claims, understanding ISO codes, and different things of that nature. And what do people care about? What metrics do people care about? I think that's generally important. Also, understanding their code base, any standards is usually important. Understanding their process is important. So I'd worry less about like the coding and the technical work because that will come. And I'd worry more about like this meta information around all that coding and technical work because that's going to drive like your success. I think I like when people say, technical expertise gets you the job, and also, a baseline keeps you that job. Promotions come from soft skills, right? Like your ability to drive communication and drive initiatives. So that comes from understanding what the business cares about. If you don't understand what the business cares about, you're gonna have a hard time, having conversations with the business and be like, "Hey, this is what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing it. This is why it's important to you." Because honestly, sometimes the business might not even know why something is important to them. So it's good to understand what you're connected to. If you're connected to the immigration team, the HR team, the recruiting team, what metrics do they care about? Things like that. Currently creating a portfolio project using Python to scrape live Yahoo Finance data and visualize it with Power BI dashboard. Would this be a good project to showcase on a resume? I mean, it could be definitely. I think it'd be great. I think, and I just like this because it's such a simple thing to do. It's like make it like do that, and then maybe somehow like post your like, or maybe like make some sort of chart and then like export it to like Twitter. Again, it's just like a really cheap, easy way to like not just create a dashboard, like create the dashboard, but also like show that you can work with like APIs really well. Because now you're not just working with APIs that pull data, but you're also working with data or APIs that are more like application based, like just a one-off like post kind of situation. So that's kind of why I like that. Fun way to show. And it's easy, like you don't have to build a whole website to show, a recruiter. Hi, Ben. Can you advise any simple and DE project to show in your resume for beginners? What are the must-have tech I should use? I have a video on this, on like how to start a data engineering project. I basically start by saying, what do you call it? And then actually, let me just go get that. Hold on. Just because I mean, it's gonna be the same advice. I'm gonna give you the same advice I give on this video. So let me find this video. Where's this video? You're gonna probably hear me in the background for a second. This was the first time I was in Austin. Here, I'm just gonna send you this video, and that should hopefully help. I also talk about like I talk about tools, why I pick those tools, some basic and more advanced examples, and hopefully that kind of gives you a good example. Hi, Ben. In case you don't remember me, but just want to send a huge thank you to you, I just got my D offer from Amazon. Aw, I'm so thank you. I'm so glad I helped. I'm sorry. Like there are so many people that I don't remember you directly, but I appreciate that. I don't know. Anytime you guys do that, it means a lot. Because I don't know. I feel like when I started in data engineering, there was a lot of like how-to videos, like again, SSIS, maybe some stuff around Airflow, but I feel like there wasn't as much around, I don't know, how to get a job or like what is data engineering or things like that. So I wanted to fill that need. And I feel like we are, I feel like people like Zach Wilson, me, e-learning, Darshil, we all, I think, are trying to put our heart into this. And I really appreciate this. So yeah, I want to keep pushing you guys. And yeah, and then yeah, like share your advice. Like, I mean, make sure you like if you're not in the Discord, join the Discord. Maybe give some advice to other people too. It's always about giving back. Once you've got that job. Yeah, I mean, I think that's one reason I started this channel. I mean, the other reason is because I'm trying to figure out how to increase like a funnel for consulting. But honestly, a lot of these videos are more for people just getting started, who are just trying to figure out like how do you break into data engineering, because it's never straightforward, right? I often tell people like if you want to break into data engineering, you're gonna have to go likely a little more horizontal, where you start like either as a data analyst, maybe a BI person, because those roles tend to be a good starting place. And then you can often kind of push into like, do you go the data scientist route? Do you go the data engineering route? So I wouldn't get too stuck on being like, I need to get a data engineer role day one. Like my experience, and actually, if you look at Zach's experience, right? Like our salaries, kind of follow a similar trend where it's like, first one was like, terrible. Second one was a little better, and you keep kind of going. And the first one for me, was a data analyst position, and I just took it because I needed a job. So I would just say, don't get too stuck on titles. We're probably gonna change titles in 5 years, right? Like, who knows what they're gonna be? I don't know what they're gonna be. Um, I remember when I was like filling out my resume, um, I would just like put like automation engineer, or like, 'cause I'm like, I don't really know what my title is. And then eventually I found data engineer. I'm like, okay, that's kind of what I am. So, let's see. What roadmap would you take if you want to be a data scientist at a FANG company? So if you work at a FANG company, especially at least like Facebook, and that's the one I'm going to have the strongest background in providing, but most of them, they care about a few areas. There's a good, let me get a YouTube channel really fast before I answer this question. This interview, she's great. Where is she? She is data interview pro. If you haven't found this channel, she is great. They tend to care about very specific things. So if you're going to be a data scientist at one of these, at FANG, one, they care about product, which means you understand how metrics work. You understand things like users and things like that. So you need to understand product. And I think Data Interview Pro gives you a little bit about that. Next, you're going to have some SQL. Most of them will always expect SQL. For that, you can use something like Strategy Scratch. And actually, you can probably use something like Strategy Scratch for all of this, because it will have like the product questions, it will have the SQL questions, it'll have the Python questions, it'll have the core areas that you are going to care about. Because it's going to be SQL, Python, product. Maybe in some cases they do DSNA. I've heard of that in Microsoft, but at those three core will be there. Oh, and some like machine learning and stat questions. They'll ask like some probability questions. So at least those 5 areas. So you need to care about those. I put together an interview guide. Oh, actually, let me find that as well. Sorry, data science interview guide. No, I can't find it. Medium. I have it here somewhere. Yeah, I put together a guide, I think forever ago, about how to prep for these things. So it's not necessarily a roadmap, but I think it's a solid guide. So let me share that here in a second. Just gotta sort by views. Where's this interview prep? Here we go. Data science interview guide. Let me just share this. Let me get a link. Copy friend link. So for anyone who needs a guide, here's a guide. There's a Google sheet attached. So that should give you a good start. But also start with that, and then if you need more, then I'd go to like either Elite Code or a paid service, because generally most of them are worth it. Just if you are planning to get like a FANG job in particular, because they pay so well. So I did not have those when I was interviewing, I don't think. Hi, Ben. I'm currently interviewing for a DE role, and the next round involves a take-home case study. Oh, interesting. I haven't done this. I'm always like never sure if I prefer take-home case studies, because they can take longer than an interview. And I feel like then you're like expected to do better, because they're like, oh, you can take this home, so you should do a great job. Yeah, I'd be curious what they're asking. I've honestly only ever done in-person situation, so not really sure. Let's see. Okay, that's mine. Wait, why do I have 2? Oh, I did 2 in a row. Okay. Have you explored making YouTube Shorts on your channel? I'm definitely thinking about that more and more, because I'm trying to think about like, how do you make something entertaining for 30 seconds? Because the thing with Shorts is, I think you've got, maybe personally, what like from my own experience, like I probably switch out of like scrolling through Shorts within like 2 to 3 seconds if I don't find it entertaining. So how do I like capture your interest about a data topic in like 3 seconds? So that's the question I've been asking. We asked, I think a lot of us talked about that on our whole like collab trip. Are you gonna do shorts? Are you gonna do shorts? How are you're doing shorts? How are they working? So I think we were all asking. We're all trying to learn from each other when it comes to creation, because it's like shorts make a lot of sense to some degree because they're great for discovery, but they're definitely harder in other ways, because it's like, how do you cover something in 30 seconds? Sometimes, especially me, I love to ramble, and yeah, that's definitely a problem. Let's see. Yeah, Ace the Data Science Interview by Kevin. Wow. Yep. That's a great resource as well. Actually, they just sent me a free book, and I need to kind of deal with that as well. But it's kind of great. That's a great book, and I know my girlfriend's kind of using that as well. Do you always need to take practical tests on interviews? If you mean like, your typical like four rounds or 5 rounds, like one DSNA, one SQL, one system design, et cetera, generally, yeah. Like everyone's just copied Fangs at this point. It's more than a little frustrating because it's like, well, Fangs are going to pay me a lot of money, so it's worth for me to go through this pain. But other companies that are going to pay me half as much as Fangs or a third as much of Fangs, that's always a little bit frustrating. Also, I see the next question is just Databricks. I don't know what you want with that. You're gonna have to give me more. Yeah, Databricks question mark. I don't know. Solid tool. The UI looks great, or not just looks. It is great. I don't know. Snowflake's great. Databricks is great. Like they have their uses. Like they're both solid solutions. I'm glad there's two. And there's more technically than two, but I'm glad there's at least two that we could kind of like look at, and that way they're going to have to compete with each other. I'm always about competition in the marketplace. I would suggest answering like Python or SQL interview questions in under a minute, or perhaps share a cool feature in Docker, Airflow, Beam, etc. under 1 minute. Oh, that'd be kind of interesting. Yeah, that'd be kind of interesting. I mean, in all fairness, like for SQL interview questions, there are definitely some you need. Like I remember, I'm trying to remember what the Facebook one was. Like the first two, I think I went through probably the first one in a minute, second one minute and a half, third one was like 6 minutes, and then like fourth one maybe 6 minutes, and then like fifth one I didn't finish. But yeah, you need to, like, especially when like the first few questions, you need to bang them out because they're usually easier to start with, and then you need to get through. And I'm talking about the screening interviews, especially at Facebook's like real interview. They generally ask like bigger questions, but the screening interview, it's literally to see, can you write SQL? Can you SQL yourself out of a box? Basically, can you at least understand the basic concept of a join, and do you understand how to like divide things and create a metric or something? So that'd be kind of cool. I like that idea. How different would you say BI developers from DE role or data developer? Are they all the same? I'm in Canada and trying to break into DE from data analyst job. I mean, there's going to always be crossover. That's always the hard thing, right? Like, it's like, yeah, there's some unavoidable crossover. And that's why to some degree, I think titles matter a little less. I do think BI tends to be more focused on like the Tableau building dashboard, but also maybe building some of the pipelines that get their side, whereas DEs, in theory, again, I say in theory, because sometimes you're kind of a BI data engineer person, but data engineers tend to be more of the like code heavy archetype. It would depend on the company, because some companies are just like, even their DEs, like they don't even have the tools that they're using aren't even code heavy. So they're kind of fitting in BI because they're kind of using a lot of low code solutions or something like Informatica or something. So they're now more ETL developers, or, I care less about that and focus, more on the work that you like doing, because you'll start to answer that question for yourself. I think slowly. That's what I've started to do, is like, oh, this is the work that I like doing. So you start answering that question for yourself. Try the role. If you like it, keep going with it. If you don't, try a different role. I don't know where you are in your career though, but especially if you're in your 20s, like, yeah, this is the time to figure it out. Ben, at what point you found out you are ready for consulting and helping other businesses with data struggles? A combination of things, right? I figured out I was ready for consulting when my consulting business was taking over my time. Like I didn't have time to do Facebook work. I just got to a point where I was like, I have so much consulting work and so much need to help people that I don't have time to do my actual job. So that was the that was the catalyst. I was like, I have zero time. I was probably, somewhere in my brain, I thought I could like consult and try to get a promotion at Facebook, and it was a very terrible combination of trying to do all that. And part of it's like you do have to build confidence. I tell most people, don't start charging a huge amount when you first start consulting. Build confidence, because it's scary. There are times that I've done like a 6-figure project and I've had to have help from other people, and I realized, like, I mean, if we fuck up, sorry, didn't mean to swear, but if we mess up, um, I still have to pay the people that I've hired, and this company could tell me, either we're not paying you, we want our money back, we're going to sue you, and that's terrifying, I think. So you want to make sure you're in a situation where you feel comfortable to take on these projects. You feel, confident enough in your skills, or you feel confident in your ability to fix problems. Like, if you cause a problem, that's fine. Fix it. Like, just be able to fix it, and make sure you do it with a great attitude. So that's kind of like where I figured it out. And you also realize that, um, in terms of like when you're ready, it's like the more you challenge yourself, the more you find that, like, okay, this is what I understand. I understand solution design. Okay, now that that's checked. Okay, I understand coding. Now that that's checked, my current focus is a lot on like sales and really trying to drive conversations more. Like this other area in consulting that I know I have to get better in. So I'm not perfect in that area, but I'm trying to get better in that area. But I also knew I would never get better in that area, or not at the pace I wanted, working a full-time role. So that's how I knew I was ready. Do you think leak code helps for interviews? I mean, yeah, no. I mean, if you're diligent about leak coding, or doing something like that, and you have a leak code style interview, practice makes perfect. You just make sure you're doing it in such a way that, you aren't looking for the answer. Like, make sure you actually solve the answer by yourself. I think it's really easy to click, show answer or something, so you can feel like you solved it yourself, but you didn't. So make sure you try to, figure it out yourself. Also, occasionally do it on paper. I think that's something that was very helpful when I started. Like, do things on paper occasionally. Don't just type it. I think it just connects other parts of your brain personally. I mean, like, there's be subjective. Do you mean? Um, so where do you want to work, right? Like, I'd say, AWS, I think, might still have the largest market share. I think Azure has a growing market share. GCP, meh. I don't remember specifically. I think any of those three would work great. Any of those three. It's not really, just pick one. I think one thing in life that we all have to, and I have to do better, is just pick something and commit. Realize that any three of those could be great. All three of those are great choices. Don't pick something that no one uses, and pick one and commit to it. Don't look back, right? If and also, the other advice I'd give: look around. What are people hiring for? If they're hiring for Azure around you, do Azure. If they're hiring for AWS around you, do AWS. But if they're hiring for all three, pick one and just go with it. So that's the advice there. What are some underrated, challenging, yet rewarding organizations offering data engineering roles in US? Mang, Airbnb, and Netflix are frequently talked about, but are there some hidden gems? I mean, there are definitely hidden gems. Obviously, 'cause, you also have like Spotify, or, I mean, I assume you're talking about all tech, like any tech company. The thing about any tech company is they just pay so well that if you can get that job, it's great. It can be fun to work, I think, in healthcare. That can be interesting. It generally doesn't pay as well, which is not great. Also, if you see like a interesting like series, maybe like Series B startup, and they're hiring for data engineers, and you like the product or this thing, I'd say go for that. I don't have any, I think, hidden gems. Uh, you know, um, yeah, there's a car alarm going around on outside. It's really annoying me right now. But yeah, I mean, you know, I guess, is there anything else that would be hidden? I'm trying to think. Is there anything hidden that's not a Mang, or fill in the rest, Uber, etc. Um, is there any companies? I mean, are banks any fun? I haven't worked for a bank. I'm curious. I'm always curious about banks and like hedge funds. Someone got a job at a hedge fund. I always feel like that sounds fun, but those are kind of big companies. Yeah, I'd be curious if you see a Series B around you, and you like the product, I'd say look for that. Sorry, I don't have anything specific there. Okay, I don't know what OCI. What OCI? I don't know what you're referring to. OCI. Overseas Citizenship Services of India. That's what I get when I look up OCI. Someone's gonna have to tell me what OCI is. What specific skills do you think will get someone the highest monetary offers for data engineering jobs? I mean, first of all, the only way you get a high position or a high paying role, right? Like you look at like Zach Wilson. It's a combination of things, right? Baseline technical skills that are solid, coding, SQL, Spark, cloud, probably some Docker containerization. Oh, Oracle Cloud. Sorry, I was just finally figuring out what OCI is, or OC. Yeah, sorry. So baseline skills again: Python, Cloud, Spark, things of that nature. After that, a lot of what like gets you the highest monetary value is going to be a lot of those soft skills, being able to drive initiatives, being able to take risks, and being able to like have ownership and take things like being a tech lead, which is what Zach is at Airbnb and making, over $500,000, means he's taking a lot of ownership, means he's driving a lot of projects, means he's probably still doing a lot of technical work, but he's also doing a lot of non-technical work that got him there. So the skills that will like get you those crazy pay raises aren't just technical. So I think that's important to add to it. You need your baseline skills always because that gets you the job, but you're going to have to start, fine tuning those skills because that's what's really going to, I think, make you stand apart. What are your thoughts on AWS and GCP certifications? Are they worth it? I mean, we have to clarify what worth it means. If you're new and you have zero experience and you're trying to get a job, they could help, maybe. And if you have nothing else to do, probably a great way to spend your time. But it might be better to spend your time like networking and trying to converse with people. If you're trying to get like a higher paying job or a different role at a different company, then yeah, they're very worth it. I think they fill in a lot of gaps. If you've only ever built AWS and GCP kind of just for fun, or at a company, I think what ends up happening is like you just end up getting gaps. So getting the certifications kind of fills in a lot of holes. And I think it's like an MBA. MBAs I find are very, at least personally, mentally, they seem very useful if you've already worked in industry because it's going to like connect a lot of these dots that you've been hearing for the longest time. And you've already been like, you already have like actual things to connect them to. But if you just go straight into an MBA, I don't know, it's like, what are you going to connect them to? You're just taking more very high level courses that if they don't connect anywhere, it's gonna I don't think it has the same value and the same impact that if you've done it. That's my thought both about MBAs and certifications. Like they're very useful if you've already kind of like worked with these tools lightly because they start filling in a lot of the holes that you've collected over the years just by like building things the way you thought was right. And then they're going to correct you like, oh, it's actually better to do this or use this key management system or things of that nature. Also, for anyone who's curious, OCI, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. Yeah, I mean, they were a little late to the game. I haven't had to use them. I've never seen them used. I'm sure they exist. Like Oracle's sales team is, pretty legendary at being able to do enterprise sale. But I haven't seen it. So, maybe I just haven't worked for the wrong companies. But, things like OCI or SAP, they still exist, right? They're still massive. They have successful units. They're not as successful, obviously, as your Azure, AWS, etc. But they have their spot. I don't know if I don't think they'll ever take over. I think again they kind of missed the boat. That's what Larry Ellison gets for making fun of AWS. I think it was Amazon. He was like, "Oh, Amazon runs on AWS," and supposedly the story is that when Jeff Bezos heard that, he's like, "All right, we're building our own thing." I don't know if that's true or if that's just a funny story, but it's definitely a funny story. How do you see the data landscape in the next 10 years? More granularity and better defined roles, more opportunities, or simply less jobs due to automation? So, yeah, this is something I'm always kind of sitting on, like trying to figure out, okay, what's going on in the next 10 years? The truth is, we've had a lot of tools and automated solutions for a long time. Ever since I started, I've heard the term self-service analytics and other tools or other kind of coined terms that have to deal with making analytics easier. I think businesses have such specific questions sometimes, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes they are, or they just like feeling like such special individual, businesses that they just like building their own things. Even large companies tend to have a lot of like customized solutions for data infrastructure. maybe on the smaller side, I think smaller companies will continue to try to figure out how to use, the modern data stack, so to say, because they can't afford to hire three $200,000 data engineers. So I think on that level, hopefully we figure out how to put that together very effectively. I think that's what we will see. We'll see like orchestrators of orchestrators and a lot of like pre-mapped out solutions for like, hey, we're gonna, take care of your RevOps metrics day one. You're just gonna plug us into Salesforce, all these other solutions, and day one, that'll exist. So I think that's gonna exist on the smaller side. On the larger enterprise side, I think there's just so much data that we're going to continue to collect, and it's going to get so much more complicated with like things like, we're already doing a lot of IoT, but even more so. And there's going to be so many more questions that we're going to need all these automated tools to just help manage all of the work, right? These tools are just basically like the equivalent of factory tools, when they were first introduced in the first industrial revolution, right? Like they helped automate work because we had so much more work and so much more, we need to become this consumption based society, because that's how, you cause growth. So in a similar way, there's gonna be so much data that we need these tools just to like keep up with data. So that's what I see is like, hopefully we get some better practices on tooling in such a way, because like data is just going to keep getting worse. Right. And we're getting to a point where like, we're not even gonna have enough space, like literal space, to keep all this data. So we're gonna have to get a lot better at like processing, managing, utilizing data. So yeah, I imagine things are just gonna get more complicated on a much larger scale. So plenty of jobs to do, and plenty of work to keep going. Trust me. Hiring freezes in data engineering. Yes, I think I referenced this at the beginning of my the talk. Yes, there's a lot of hiring freezes going on. Most likely, what's going to be, especially at big tech, is and I don't know, they've always personally kind of done this. They tend to hire more mid to senior roles, because the ROI, I think for I don't remember, I'm trying to remember what it was. I think it's like the ROI of most like hires at like Facebook or something don't happen until like IC5 or something. So which is basically a senior position. So mid senior level positions are generally the place that they start seeing the biggest return on investment. So I think that's probably why they're looking for those positions. We'll see. I mean, Facebook's, I think, like for example, with Facebook, they're trying to suss out like how business is going to go, right? Like they're having a hard, like they're still growing at a pretty rapid rate, but their daily active users is not as fast. And I'm trying to remember if it dropped, but it's not as much. Even though their income is growing, if their base is dropping, that's going to be a problem. And they haven't put out like a substantially new product forever. So yeah, they're going to have to be a little more scrupulous with where they spend their money. Yo, Joe. Hi. Let's see, what was the one before this? If you could go back in time, what would you do differently? Man, I don't know. I personally, I like a lot of what I've done in my life. I think maybe there's a few like, oh, you know what I would do differently? Invest in Bitcoin. But besides the obvious, like invest in Bitcoin, invest in the right stocks, whatever. I'm trying to think. I don't know. I love a lot of what I've done in life. Like a lot of it's all led to another thing, so it's hard to say like what I would change, because everything that I've ever done has led to where I am now, and I'm pretty happy with where I'm now. Maybe tried to get no, not even that. Yeah, I I think life is a journey, and every part has gotten me here, and I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty content. Do business analysts and data engineers interact with each other? Yeah, definitely. Data engineers tend to be kind of the like, or data analysts tend to be data engineering stakeholders in a way. Like we generally create data sets for data analysts, or create layers that they can work with. So, we are the ones who kind of pull the data, help them have access to it, maybe simplify it for them so that they're not having to spend all day pre-processing data. They still have to spend a lot of time pre-processing data, but hopefully less. We're the ones who generally maintain the data warehouse, help automate and productionize systems. That's what I did a lot of. I think, or not a lot of, but I did plenty of that at Facebook, where it was like an analyst built something. Okay, now we got to, make this a repetitive system, and not just, a one-off analysis. So yeah, there's definitely a ton of interactions. Basically, the data engineer builds the thing or manages the data sets that data analysts, data scientists, product managers use to make all their decisions and do their analysis. Awesome. I don't know. There's no question there, but it's a not a bad target. I'd say don't focus purely on fangs, but yeah, not a bad target. It'll pay well. That's always great. Cats or dogs? Oh man, I love them both, honestly. Like cats are super convenient. My girlfriend has a cat, and it's so nice to like leave town and just have someone watch over the cat. And her cat's sweet. So in that way, cats are great. But dogs are super adorable and derpy, and like, how can you not like a dog? So I like both, honestly. I can't, you can't make me pick, man. You can't make me pick. I'm also a middle child. I'm very hard to be committal in terms of some things because they're both just too great. I like both. Hey, I'm going to pursue a master's in analytics. What should be the roadmap towards landing a DE job in the USA? I have zero work experience and doesn't have technical background. My recommendation, if you've got zero work experience, get an internship if you can. Like, I don't know if you can take time to get an internship, but get an internship. Get a DE intern role. That would be probably best. That's really what's going to help, honestly. Best advice, I think. I think, just to add to this, I think most of the time we get distracted in like school or something like that by grades. We think like, oh, we're here to get good grades, but you're not there to get good grades. You're there to get a job. So the way to get a job, personally, look for an internship, get that internship, and hopefully get a returning offer. What do you think about learning SSIS and SAS in 2022? Are they still in demand? When it comes to tool-specific things, I usually say don't learn them until you need them. Learn the basics, become a beast at Python, a beast at SQL, understand data warehousing, and then the tools will come. Like if you see an interview, learn enough to maybe talk about it, but overall, tools are tools. They could disappear tomorrow. The basics are always there. Understanding how to work with Linux and command line and bash, like those will always be there. Those have not left us. Understanding networking, even like understanding how to work with SFTP, we're still working with that stuff. Like that is like stuff that we are not losing anytime soon. So focus more on that. Don't get distracted by specific tools. Hello, Ken. Wink. Did you do the course GCP engineering course? From reading it, just seems to prepare you for taking the exam. This is a reference to, yeah. I mean that's yes, I did, and that's the focus, right? Like the focus is to get you the exam. It fills in the gaps for everything you don't know about GCP. I never took the exam because I need to. I need to take that. I've got like 4 exams I want to take because I want to become partners. Like I've talked about this in the course too, right? Like I want to become partners with all these things, but I just haven't had time. It's the joys of trying to run your own business. But yeah, I think it's definitely worth it. It just goes over passing the course, or passing the exam. But it also goes over like how all these tools work. So I think that's what you want. Best skills to increase salary as a data engineer: learn data science, MLOps, learn soft skills, have your basics, and then learn how to negotiate well, learn how to communicate, learn how to drive initiatives, MLOps, all this other stuff. Like those are just more technical skills. Like you're just adding, like those are just very like linear skills that you're adding. Like if you become a manager and you need all those skills, that makes sense. But those roles like data science, MLOps, data engineering, all pay, like if you're an individual contributor, about the same, right? Like they're not going to pay drastically different. So if you want to progress, you got to like get better at the role. And better at the role doesn't mean more technical. Like to some degree it does. Like if you go more the like distinguished engineer route, but even then it means taking on bigger scope projects, which will force you to learn to get better at like data engineering as a whole, rather than like further diversifying your skill set. So I would say, if you want to make more money, you have to dive deeper, not try to go broader personally. And unless you go consulting route, then maybe you go broader. But overall, like those roles all pay generally about the same. You have to work on other skills, basically. Either increase your scope of work from a like technical aspect, like you're now having to figure out how to solve this problem that involves scaling a system that's dealing with 1 billion users, right? Something like that level. Or you're figuring out how to manage a team of 10 people, because what happens is you can only impact so much as an individual contributor. There's like a limit. There's a cutoff, right? Data science has some options there because you can like write an algorithm that in theory could make the company billions of dollars. But most work you can only like impact this small amount. If you want to keep scaling, you either have to scale in scope of work and technical scope, or you have to scale in like the ability to like manage a bunch of people. So that's where you get the better monetary return. Yeah, that's true about being a middle child. Yes, I have a hard time like picking. We did a video this weekend, and there was like overrated, underrated, and I had such a hard time saying anything was over underrated because to me there's always like nuance in everything. Can you talk about CI/CD data engineering tools, best practices? I think that'd be a video on itself. I mean the classics like, and honestly, like a good company will have a good CI/CD process in place. Like if you work for Facebook, you don't have to think about it. You just push code from VS Code. You just push it, and it goes into there's diffs. I was trying to remember the tool diffs, and then from diffs, it runs tests automatically, and then after that, it goes on forward. So GitHub Actions, things like that. Set up tests in GitHub. That's like a baseline, and then build from there. But yeah, I'd have to make a whole video on like actual best practices and tools, and that would take a long time. How do you suggest to start with data modeling, and where can I find good practice problem set? Well, one, obviously read books, read the Inman kind of side, read the Kimball kind of side, and then I just tell people like pick an app you like, pick Uber, pick DoorDash for food, pick a thing, and model like the base ERD for what that looks like. Think about what is involved in that, because that's what it would be, right? Like you're gonna be like, oh, YouTube. Who's involved in YouTube, right? Videos, creators, just general users, different things like that. Okay, posts, because you can post in community and things like that. Put all that there, comments, right? How would I model this? What are the metrics I would create off of this? How would I write queries to make those metrics? So it's really about you, I think, and I think this forces you to think about a lot more, right? Not just like a person laying out what you need. You have to think about what you need to do, like what you like. It's very abstract and very ambiguous, and I think that's great. That's what you need when you're studying like data modeling. You need a very like ambiguous problem, and you need to define it. So yeah. Ben, your thoughts on online professional courses for DE, top universities like MIT versus cloud certification and more tool specific certs? Yeah, I know generally this is like to get a job, and I mean, again, for me, I usually feel like if you can't get a data engineering job straight out of school, get a data analyst role, get something like that, start learning data engineering, get a cert, and then it'll probably be easier to kind of work into data engineering internally at that company, and then next job, get a data engineering role. That's my general roadmap, right? So in terms of like MIT versus cloud, I don't know. I need to like check out MIT's course, just because I'm not fully sure. Like it's so hard to tell if some courses are just like trying to jump on a trend, or if they're genuinely trying to help people. And I want to make sure people are like genuinely being helped. The cloud certs are kind of incentivized that you become a decent enough cloud developer, because you are going to then use their tools to implement their solutions. And if you're not good at that, they look bad, right? Like it's like, oh, or is it the cloud or is it the developer? So I imagine they have a little more of an incentive, and they make money based off of what you implement. So yeah, that's why I kind of lean more towards that, because I think there's more incentive in the right direction there, a little more. How important is Spark in general? Is it used a lot for companies? I mean, it's used at plenty of companies. I don't know if it's happened to have like Spark. Like we didn't use it at Facebook, and if you did, it was very abstracted away. But there are plenty of big, like if you want to work for big tech, I'd say it's probably pretty important. You should know it. Like I think LinkedIn uses it, Netflix, Airbnb. So in those cases, yes, like if that's the role you're looking for. But if you're not going for those companies, then maybe Airflow and SQL is probably solid. Dear data scientist, which one is more convenient for someone who wants to travel and focus more on his traveling career and use DE or DS? What? You have a traveling career? How do you get a traveling career? And why do you need another job if you've got a traveling career? I mean, I think you're going to be stuck working at one of those roles first to start out either way. There's plenty of companies that in both DE and DS that are going to offer remote work. DS, the one thing I will say is you likely won't be on call as often. So if a data pipeline fails, as a DE, you're going to have to go fix it. And if you're traveling a lot on flights, and you can't like wiggle around that, you're going to look bad. But as a DS, you could, in theory, when your presentations are, when your data is due, when things are going to happen. So in theory, that's kind of the point. So yeah, in some way, travel career, my guy, what are you doing? Living the life over here, living La Vida Loca. Which job profile should someone target if it doesn't want too much engage? Oh my gosh, this guy doesn't want to work. No, I'm being facetious. I think when you start a job, like especially when you're first starting out, you're gonna be you should be very engaged. You should be trying to learn as much as possible, right? Like why are you trying to not learn? I mean, obviously travel is great. DS is probably fine because again, your position, when your meetings are, when you gotta have deliverables due, and then you can travel a little more and say like, oh, I'm on a flight, but you're just gonna block out your calendar. Yeah, you're funny. I'm loving this. How important is a CS degree for your DE or SE career? It's very helpful to get the interview, right? After that, probably less important. That's the thing. Is like once you have the job, like I think I still occasionally get like a sweet offer from Amazon or something like that. So once you have the job, once you have the experience, companies care a little bit less. Yeah, it's important for the first job. After that, maybe a little less important depending where you work, the first job. Especially if you get a job at like Facebook or Google or something as a SWE, then your college degrees, like people don't look at that probably, I assume. But yeah, that's my thoughts there. Seattle versus Cali versus Texas. Oh my gosh, versus Boston for data-oriented roles. I mean, what kind of life? Like, what life do you like? Do you like staying out all night? Do you like chilling? Do you like surfing? I mean, that's going to be on you. The right question here is like, what lifestyle do you want? And that's something only you can answer because all those are very different things. Do you like rain? Do you like people going to sleep at 10 a.m. or 10 p.m.? Go to Seattle. If you like, sun and earthquakes and occasional surfing, Cali. If you like heat, but sun, often a lot of sun. And even in Texas, it's so broad, but like Texas, like Austin's got a crazy nightlife, or at least a decent nightlife, and so does NYC. I don't think Cali had the best nightlife, but like if you love nightlife, like Austin, Texas, NYC, a lot of fun. Yeah, not an easy question to answer. That's going to be on you. With many jobs looking for 1+ year of experience on MPP systems, how do you navigate this when you're using a single instance database? I mean, at the very least, you can, if you've got the role of data engineer, you can maybe play around with Redshift and, kind of tell them like, yeah, I've at least worked with Redshift or worked with other MPP systems, and kind of tell them what you know, what you don't know. I think personally that's a lot of those roles are put together by recruiters who maybe don't understand that it's pretty easy, not easy, but you can transfer your skills to the situation. And again, focus on you're focusing on the job application and the job description. Like, see if you can network too. Like, if you can get referrals to companies, all those things matter so much less. So, yeah, look for networking, look for referrals. When you network, do make sure that you because I get people who reach out to me and they're like, "Oh, can you get me a job or something?" And it's like, if I don't know you and you're not coming through a friend, I might ignore you because I just have, as you can imagine, I have tons of those, and that's time and then my reputation that you're asking. So preferably if you go networking, make sure you look for a friend who maybe knows someone there at a company that you want to work for, or someone that you know directly there, because that will always be more beneficial. Just my thoughts. Airline, they are tech heavy. I don't know if that was answering a question. I imagine somewhere. How much data science or statistic knowledge should one have? If you want to do you want to become a data scientist? Then as much as possible. No, but what's your goal? And that's oh, you got another one. Sorry, I just saw that. For a data or software engineering role. Well, for a software engineering role, I mean, none. You don't need data science, or even stats unless it's a software software engineer, data role, which are very common at like Lyft. If it's a data role, is it a data science role? Then, as much as you can. If it's a data engineering role, maybe some, but probably not that much. Like hopefully they have a data scientist. Do you use Java? Is it still useful today? What can data engineers do with Java? I learned Java. Java was the first language I learned, public static void main. But I don't know. I haven't used it since. I have not used it since. I think it's a great baseline because I think it's like a good medium between like Python and like C++. Like you still have to learn just enough other, things that Python just like abstracts away and you don't have to think about. So I think that's kind of nice. But, you can also get away with Python. It depends on where you're at, though. Most companies, I think, at this point are using Python pretty heavily, though. Or if not that, like Scala. So, but personally, Java's great. I think it's a fun language to learn. Well, maybe not fun's the wrong word. I think it's like if you learn that, Python will be easy. It's kind of the way I look at it. It's like if you learn that, Python's easy. How much ML knowledge should one have as a DE? I mean, if you're at a startup that has no ML person, then a lot, right? And you're doing ML work and you need ML work done, then probably a lot. If you're at a large company that has, their own ML team, maybe not much, maybe just enough to figure out how to occasionally implement solutions. And even that, like, or solutions being models. And even then, right, like more than likely, the person that's implementing those models will probably be like in ML ops or something. We were actually having that discussion this weekend with one person where they were talking about how there's like discussion about who should own deploying models. Because sometimes, especially if it's like batch models or something like that, you might just be doing it in Airflow. And then it's like, well, this is kind of a data engineering-ish pipeline, sort of. And, it often is like dependent on how big a company is. So if it's big, you probably don't have to know too much. If it's small, you might have to know a little. Why data engineers need data visualization skills? They don't technically. I like having some because it lets you show off your work somehow, right? Like otherwise, the value from your work is kind of like bifurcated away, right? Like the value from your work is not part of it is like creating the data set, but understanding how that data gets used, I think is valuable. So I think it's useful to just at least at a baseline, just understand like how do you build a dashboard? What should that dashboard look like? What goes into a dashboard? Because that's just helping you kind of connect with the data analyst, the BI team, the analytics engineer, whoever's using your data more. And I think that's always helpful to at least feel empathy for what they're doing. Hey, traveling guy here. Can one use his learning that he develops while moving towards being a DS or someone who is moving towards ML engineer or DE? Like, can he use those skills for trading? I mean, sure. I mean, you can lose a lot of money doing that. There are plenty of people who probably could tell you. It's going to be hard. And if you've got some high frequency arbitrage that you can set up, sure, but it's a great way to lose money too. if you have some great idea, but I'd hope you have some experience in trading before you go that route. Like make sure you understand how to do trades and how to build those models because it's not just running a regression and then being like done, right? Like you're gonna want more than that. You want some domain expertise there. Do you use data structures and algorithms in your day-to-day work? I have not in a long time. Just haven't. Interviews, plenty of interviews though. Do DEs need a deep knowledge of algo? Like, I suppose maybe not a deep knowledge, but you should. Like, why not? Like, it's kind of fun. Brain teasers are kind of fun. Maybe not like dynamic programming. Maybe you don't need to like spend all day doing that. But yeah, like understand DSNA. I think that's valuable. What's the difference between a data analyst and a BI engineer for those starting out? I mean, BI engineers tend to be a little more like slightly more technical, like where data analysts might you might just be using Excel and Power BI, and you might not be writing any SQL. Some companies I think are a little more heavy now with SQL, but I think there's that aspect of it. BI engineers, I think you try to develop more of like the full pipeline, like after the data set's made, you try to think like, okay, how's this all getting built? I'm going to write the SQL that creates a table or a view, and then that view is going to connect, to this dashboard like this, and then I'm going to develop the dashboard like that. So I think you think a little more through the system, whereas data analysts might be doing a little more ad hoc work and maybe building the occasional dashboard. How many hours a week do you actually work? How do you keep things interesting if under 30 hours a week? I work a lot more than 30 hours a week. I work probably too much. Interesting. I mean, I have a lot of different problems to solve. I'm solving data engineering problems, solving solutioning problems, so designing solutions. I'm solving coding problems. I'm solving like go-to-market problems for certain companies in the data space. I have so many problems that I don't get bored. What would be the best way to network from a small town? Are there online groups that would recommend? Is cold messaging on LinkedIn worth it? Thanks. Yeah, this is something I've been, I'm trying to like figure out like what's the best way. Like thinking about back to my days, like what's the best way to network? Step one, if you can find like if you know people that work at other companies that maybe they or work or have people that work at other companies that you want to work for, talk to that person that you know already because that makes that connection easier. Like that should be step one. Hopefully you went to college and I'm assuming you went to college. So then, some people who probably went to a different role. So, first layer of connections that then introduce you to friends is probably the best first route. There are online communities. You've got data engineering subreddit. That's great. You've got what I'm trying to think of. So I'm thinking of open source communities. You can try to contribute there. Just different ways you can kind of try to become involved. Find something that you like. If you like Trino, try to commit to Trino or something. There are Slack channels. The Discord that I have, if you can find it linked on some of my videos. There's that. There's I think like 700 people currently there. There are plenty of online communities that you can kind of network, figure out. I hate saying trying to be useful, but try to be useful. Try to be like if you don't know that person, try to figure out how you can help them. But yeah, I think the best way is like find people first, and that's probably your best route first. Quick question: which role is low hanging fruit? High supply, low demand. What? Do you mean low supply, high demand? I guess I'm curious what you mean here, because I feel like you mean the other way, right? Like which one of these roles has? I mean, yeah. Overall, all these roles are generally in highest demand for mid to senior level positions. The bottom is always hard because most companies like hiring mid to senior level. That's usually a challenge. Again, I would focus less on title, focus more on the skills that you're using. Make sure that you're doing things that are helpful or doing things that are useful, like make sure you've got your solid coding. Make sure you build solid data pipelines. Talk about the value that you've driven at companies. And then if you're applying for a BI job and you've kind of done some BI work, even though you're a data engineer, then put BI, right? Because you've done some of that BI work. And titles are kind of here or there. I think there's like harder lines. Like if you were DE and you said you were DS at Facebook, that's questionable, right? Like I'd say that's borderline a little bit unethical to make that kind of assertion. But like the difference between like DE versus BI or the other way around, it's like, well, if you've done the work, you've done the work. Again, there are some probably blurry lines there that I might not cross, especially at bigger companies. But at smaller companies, you do so much work, you do everything that whatever your role is, probably not the work that you do. What is the most important for a data analyst role, SQL or Python for landing entry-level jobs? I'd say SQL. SQL and then like some Power BI or something, or Tableau or some sort of visualization skill. Yeah, this makes more sense. High demand, low supply. I was just like, I think you mean the other way around. Yeah, I want to work a role that has no supply. Or sorry, I want to work a role that has low demand and a huge supply. I was like, I don't think that's what you mean. But thank you. Sorry, that's okay. I make those types all around, or those errors all the time. Who has to work more on a daily basis? DA, DE, ML engineer. I want to learn the hardest concepts in the data field so that I get to work less. So which should I target? You really don't want to work. I mean, I think data engineers tend to be we're the middle child. We have to make everyone happy on the SWE side, on the DA side, on the DS side. I mean, look, if you're solid at DS work, I think you can do DS or DA work,
in such a way that you're gonna have to work hard. Like I don't know. I guess I don't understand this idea of like work less. Um, um, but in theory, like you have to do a lot of upfront work, right? Like there's, I don't know. Like, to me, it's like even saying that, it's like that makes it sound like DS don't do hard work. They do plenty of hard work too. I think it's just a DE could get like a phone call in the middle of the night that says a pipeline's broken, and that's really stressful and annoying. But a DS might not have that happen. But there are other things that are stressful and annoying for them. So I don't know. You're asking for roles that are paid pretty heavily and all require a lot of work. I don't know what else to tell you. Hi, which has more job openings? Is it safe to go into? First of all, like, I mean, it's very easy to switch from either, like, from, well, more, it's pretty easy to switch from DE to DA, right? If you've got solid skills, especially SQL skills. If you've gone the super technical route, maybe not as much. But so, yes, it's probably safe to become a DE in 2022. But in 5 years from now, who knows? Things are going to change very quickly. We are going into a very tight market, I think, for the next few months, 12 months. Hiring is going to be a stiff, especially if you're just breaking into the industry. So everyone's going to have our time. How does your day look split between meetings and actual coding? I try to keep myself down to like 4 meetings a day, maybe 5, like 30-minute meetings, 30-minute meetings a day. Now that I'm consulting and I kind of decide my own time. Yeah, that's generally my goal. It's like my goal. Don't always hit it, but personal goal. If I have like 8 to 9 meetings, it just kills productivity and I can't get to coding or I can't get to the things that I need to do. So generally I try to push it out to 5 meetings a day. And if I have more meetings, I try to like move meetings that are maybe people just trying to meet me, like a VC or something, like out more, because I'm like, I want more time for work. So that's my general split. How many years of experience do you need to apply for a mid-senior job? Generally, again, like it's less about years of experience and more about how you've applied those. But I'd say like 3-ish years is generally mid, 3 to 5 years mid. Senior, 5 to 6, 7. Again, it's going to depend where. I know plenty of people, like, look at Zach. Zach has blown through those numbers. I think he's like a tech lead, which is arguably, I think 2 or at least 1 level above senior. And he did that, I think, 2014 to now. So he blew through those numbers. So it's how you apply that more than anything else. You can push through those numbers, but you need to work for companies that are going to push you. It's really hard to like know how to be a senior if you don't have solid seniors around you. I am doing well. Thank you for asking. I probably should. I probably will be wrapping this up here in a few minutes, but let me take a few more questions. Hey Ben, could you please interview for day? I don't know. You want me to go interview for a data science role? Is that what you'd like? I don't know what you mean. Yeah, not sure what you mean there. Let's see. To be honest, if you don't want a ton of work, get a job with the federal government. You know what? That's a great response. Thank you. That's a good response. Yeah, it's just I don't know. If you want to make a lot of money, you're gonna like, maybe once you get the right role, but even then, like I like let's say you get a job at a FANG. One thing that I noticed is like working at a FANG, you would literally work with people who their worst day would be your best. Like they would have a bad day, like working, or a bad week, and you would be putting everything in it and they'd still be out producing you, because that's what these companies attract, is people who, know how to work hard. Don't get me wrong, there are definitely people who figured out how to like quote unquote game the system, figured out exactly what projects to work on and do things like that. But there are people that you'd work with who are, just machines. They just produce, and you're over here like, I'm trying my best, and you're over here working so hard, making me look bad. So I guess that's why I don't understand that. Any new interesting topics in data engineering that caught your eye? I think there's a lot of stuff we need to polish. Personally, I think there's a lot of stuff we need to like pause and polish and get solid right now. I'm not looking too much new. I'm looking to like make things solid and make sure we build solid, simple systems. Oh, could you please interview me? Probably not. There are what do you call it? Services that do that. I don't remember which ones off the top of my head, but there are services that, if you want to practice for interviews, that will like take like FANG people and interview you. I don't know how they legally do that. Probably they shouldn't, but if you want that those exist. I don't offer those services. How do you get consulting gigs without being an influencer? There are definitely other ways. I've definitely worked with a consultant who doesn't do as much influencing work. I do think LinkedIn though is a great way to get consulting work. So I don't understand why you wouldn't want to do it this route because it does make it easier. But if you're not that, the other way to do it is like be really good at networking, be really good at partnerships, because solutions will often want you to partner with them. Like if you're a solid Google Cloud partner, they'll likely send you work. If you're a solid Looker partner, they'll send you work. So there are partnerships you can set up that usually are a great way as well. How many months did it take to get into a data engineering profile if I prepare a day, and what certifications to do? I don't know what your background is. If you got zero coding, zero SQL, it's going to take, a few years. If you've got at least those, yeah, I mean, you could probably, add the right skills around you that take like a year. But then after that will be becoming a real data engineer at a company, and that will take even longer. No, I'm not going to say. What's this? What's this? Yeah, you got me this time. I want a very less upfront work and have more technical work so that I don't have to engage with people as much in the organization so that I can. Yeah, I mean, there are people who do that. I know people who do that. They're very good at like knowing, like it's more important if that's your personality, it's less important the job role you pick and more important the projects you pick in that role. There are people that I know, and generally what they're really good at is picking the right work to actually do and picking the right work to say no to. So that's far more important than picking the right role. For cracking the DE role in a FANG, what's the level of DSNA I have to practice for leak code? I'd say at least medium. I don't know if I have a favorite algo. I'd say at least medium. No. All right. Yeah, I've been going for an hour and a half. That generally I do an hour. So I'm going to wrap this up, you guys. I really appreciate all your time. Hopefully, I answered lots of important questions for you guys. If you have time and if you want to like join a community that helps you become a DE, DS, whatever, check out. I've got a few here. Let me put a Discord link here. I'm gonna put a Discord link because I'm getting ready. Join in, poke questions, see if other people can answer. I'm always trying to figure out how we can be better at this. So. Thank you all. Thank you so much for all of your hard work, for coming in. I appreciate all your time. I will see you guys next time. And enjoy your guys' evenings or mornings, wherever you're at. Good night.